I don't think people are watching this for the video quality.
Okay, fine. Welcome everyone to yet another episode of Dad's a Dagobah, where we are going to review Chapter 11. Yep, Chapter 11, The Heiress of the Mandalorian.
The Heiress, which I thought was one of the weaker titles, but doesn't really matter. I don't care about the titles at all. But I thought The Heiress,
I was waiting for Princess Leia to make a cameo.
seriously, where was General Organa? She needs to make an appearance at some point.
I think technically at this point in the timeline, she would be Senator Organa. I think. Anyway, who cares? So let's get into a breakdown of the episode. Last week, well, wait, first, Sean, I have a question for you. I don't have my mask. I have a mask that has Baby Yoda on it. I went to Trader Joe's yesterday. The guy asked me, "Oh, what do you think of the controversy?" I was like, "What controversy?" He's like, "The Baby Yoda eating the eggs and killing those people, those frog people." I'm like, "Is there a controversy?" Sean, there is a controversy about canceling Baby Yoda.
Listen, I was at the forefront of that wave. Last week, I said it was a little bit disturbing that he was this genocidal maniac that was destroying the last of this poor frog lady's
Broom.
progeny. Yes. And I had actually seen a couple of different theories about how maybe on Twitter about how maybe the child was actually saving the eggs and the eggs were in the actual canister were going to be destroyed somehow, but then he was going to regurgitate a few eggs that were still intact so that they could. No, I think we can safely say at this point after ending chapter 11 that he just straight up ate and killed those babies
Okay,
last.
my wife brought up a good point though. They were unfertilized eggs. It's no different than eating chicken eggs. Unfertilized chicken eggs.
Well, there are certain people, we call them vegans, and they don't think that that is a good thing to do, Joseph.
Wait, what? Well, let's not get into another controversy here, Sean. No,
That's why people are watching this show. They come to us because they know that we are have the hot takes. We just
I,
walk that edge. We walk that edge of
I told the
controversy.
Trader Joe guy, I said, as Star Wars fans, don't we live for controversy though? Don't we live for it? Now that Rise of Skywalker is over and the trilogy is over, I mean, we gotta focus on something to get angry about, right?
Yeah, I think that this will blow over. I don't think there's any controversy. It's funny to talk about, but the
Yeah.
child, it's too cute. You cannot stop the wave of popularity for Baby Yoda.
Well, let's get into the first part of the sequence. We have them arriving at the planet, and I had an interesting. Well, I had a thought about this. You know, they're entering the atmosphere of the planet, right? And they start lighting on fire, akin to General Grievous's flagship coming into Coruscant, right? Where, well, at least we still flying half a ship. Um, my question is, how do ships typically enter an atmosphere of a planet?
We said the same thing when we were watching. We're like, oh, okay, it's gonna burn to a crisp. What if I was like, so what if the landing array was functional and he had the autopilot or navicomputer to do that for him? They would have come in at an angle where he wasn't going to incinerate the entire hull of the ship. Like, I don't understand how doing that manually created such a terrible fireball there.
He's a terrible pilot, if you ask me.
But I will say something interesting um, that maybe gives some more clarity to that. That's not canon. That's kind of outside of uh, the actual story is that Bryce Dallas Howard is the one that directed this episode, daughter of Ron Howard, and the famous director and Archie on Happy Days. And she said on Twitter that I just looked at right before we got on this call, that was an homage to Armageddon, which her father directed.
Apollo 13.
Or Apollo 13, not Armageddon. He did direct Armageddon too, though, I think. Anyway, but Apollo 13.
I thought Armageddon was blow up guy, Transformer guy.
Oh yeah, maybe that was. You're right. It was definitely Apollo 13 though. So yeah, so you must have seen that too then.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, so that was an homage then to Apollo 13, an homage to her dad.
Where the command module with the 3 astronauts is coming in from the coldness of space, coming into the Earth's atmosphere, lights on fire, as they typically do, but then the frozen water droplets are then melting. And anyway, yeah, I thought that was a very cool homage to her father. Yeah. And overall, it seems like, speaking of Bryce Dallas Howard, she's getting a lot of praise for this work. And I have to admit something. I saw a bunch of the praise for this episode before I watched it. Like, you go, girl, awesome job, Bryce Dallas Howard. So I was watching this episode thinking, okay, a lot of people like the direction of this episode. I need to watch with an eye of what does a good directed episode look like? I can't tell a difference. I don't know what I'm looking for. What's a good directed versus bad directed? I don't know.
I will say I agree with you. And borderline, I don't know, because I think that this episode, chapter 11, I definitely enjoyed more than last week, than chapter 10.
Oh, yeah.
No question about that. But I still think that I liked chapter 9 better with the crate dragon. And for whatever reason, the little bit I saw on Twitter, I feel like there was a lot of praise for this episode. And I don't disagree with it, but I think that I maybe am not seeing something because I wasn't that hyped about it either. I don't know.
And I don't know how much of a good episode is a function of the writing versus the acting versus the directing versus the editing. Like,
yeah.
How much does, I feel like writing is the main part and the acting is second, and how much does directing really kind of make an episode good or bad? But maybe someone can point out a badly directed episode and be like, oh, okay. Because last season, she did the one on the planet with the ATST.
Yeah, chapter 4.
Which wasn't a well-liked episode, not because of the directing, but because of the tone shift that it had. Going to a different planet, doing some weird side mission, and that's why it wasn't liked,
Whereas when I think back to that episode, now that I've seen the whole of season 1, I thought chapter 4 last season was actually a pretty good episode. I liked the episode. I just didn't know at the time that was going to be a continued tone in the season, which was these one-off episodes of seemingly isolated storylines.
Right.
And I think that's exactly what we were saying about last week too. We felt the same way about chapter 10. This seems like a isolated episode that doesn't really
I don't know how they're going to tie in episode 10 to anything, honestly.
Other than just being a chauffeur for Frog Lady to get to the planet where her husband's waiting to fertilize those eggs.
Okay, I had some.
And they at least, you know what? We spent all that time in that ice cave. They at least could have given us a love scene with Frog Lady and Frog Man fertilizing those eggs.
Speaking of, Abby called out when they see each other and they greet each other. Abby was like, "Oh, are they about to do it right now?"
Right here on the street, let's fertilize these babies. We do not need. Well, if you notice, I mean, they're on the street, they greet each other, that's very heartwarming, great. They go to the end, the Mandalorian, whatever is with the corn, they go on the ship. We'll talk about that in a second, but just go back to the frog people for a second. When he comes to drop baby Yoda back off, the eggs have been fertilized because they start hatching. I'm like, the frog people, it was quick work. They were like, the end's over there. That's where they can find the Mandalorians. We got some stuff we got to do. Let's go.
And also, I saw a meme this week of it was the Mandalorian shooting all the spiders and stuff, and then it cuts to the frog lady in the spa, and it shows the subtitles of "Frog lady makes frog noises." Like that's the subtitles, and then today it was "Frog man makes frog noises." It's just, do they not have a name for these people?
Yeah, I
um,
agree.
I liked the we see the Mon Calamari and the Quarren, which I believe hate each other, right? Don't we learn that in Clone Wars that they don't like each other?
Yeah, well, they share a
Right.
planet.
Uh huh.
And but yeah, I feel like if I remember right, the Quarren are kind of looked down on, kind of the lower class people. Obviously, the planet is called Mon Cala, and it's the Mon Calamari, and then the Quarren. So the planet's named after one of the, or the species is named after the planet. One of them is like very connected to the planet and the branding of it all. You know, they're kind of the face. They're the face of the planet, and the Quarren are these second class citizens of, we could have called it something like, you know, Mon Cala or something.
Nah.
Let's share this.
Well, I guess it's like Naboo. The people, the humanoids, are the Naboo, and then we have the Gungans, right?
That's right. Very good point. But I did like seeing all the corn and the Mon Calamari together because that's kind of a, throwback to what we saw in a couple of those Clone Wars episodes. Um, and I was actually really surprised when he gets on the ship and they're apparently taking him to Mandalorians, and they kick the child Baby Yoda into that pit and that monster eats it. I'm like, what is happening right now? That
Yet
actually was
another example of no one actually taking care of the most important thing of the show.
seriously, and I feel like it was kind of suspicious when the guy was like, "Let the child watch. He'll probably get a kick out of this." Like, and the man, Mando's like, "That's close enough." Like, whatever. And I'm like, something weird is about to happen. Like,
Uh-huh.
what's going on right now? And then, bam, they kick him right into the water pit. I'm like, uh, I actually was pretty surprised by that. I was like, oh, I was not expecting that to happen.
Yeah, I don't. That whole sequence was kind of strange, and then the Mandalorians show up, and then he says the monster or whatever it was, I can't remember, has my cargo or my child. Go get it. Like she just goes straight down in there and gets it. Like what was Mando? What was Mando doing diving it? Because he dove in there, and as soon as they shut the gate, he's like, "Oh no!" Like, why don't you go get the kid first? But
Yeah, I didn't understand that either. And the Mandalorian that jumped in there and ended up retrieving the child, was her jetpack working under the water or something, or were those explosions just her blaster? And it's a good point. Why was Mando so incompetent in the water, and she jumped in like it was nothing? But
because he dove in after the child before the gate shut, and then when the gate shut, then he's like loses all control and is trying to save himself. So I don't quite understand what happened there, Mando. But anyway, a minor
is
point.
the helmet waterproof? Because if that gets waterlogged, when you were swimming in the pool as a kid and you had goggles and water got in, and it's like, well, this is over. I'm gonna drown. There's zero visibility. I'm waterlogged. I'm disoriented. So I wonder, is that Mandalorian helmet, that Beskar helmet, is that watertight?
I
Question
did
mark.
love, speaking of the helmets, when they removed the helmets, his little body language of, what the? This again? Where'd you get
Yeah.
that armor from?
I actually thought so. Obviously, the highlight of this episode is the reveal of Bo-Katan from the Rebels show. And was she also in Clone Wars?
Yeah, uh huh.
Yes, so she's in both. Duchess Satine's sister, and in Rebels, she has the dark saber. And
Well,
obviously,
she gets it from. She gets it from Sabine, right?
Yep.
And in the Clone Wars, she works with Darth Maul to take over Mandalore, but then Darth Maul betrays her and takes the throne of Mandalore, and then she reclaims it in the final season of right in the last season we just saw with the Ahsoka Tano, right? Didn't they work together to take over Mandalore?
Yeah. That's where I was getting confused because I'm like, no, it was the last season of Rebels. And I'm like, no, no, no. Last season of Clone Wars that just is the most recent season that's been released.
Yes.
So, yes, I have to keep the continuity straight in my head. But yeah, so um, it was good to see her. I obviously we had heard rumors and knew that this was going to happen already. The same thing with Ahsoka, but still, it is very cool to see these this connective tissue
And
from
and this is the voice actress. This is the same lady.
yeah.
The same lady who plays her in Rebels and Clone Wars is now the live action, which I think is awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. But I back to her reveal and Mando having that body language. I thought one of the most interesting things to me is peeling back that onion of the lore of the Mandalorians that and finding out that Mando has been raised in a one-off offshoot like zealous cult of Mandalorians that are clinging to the ancient ways of Mandalore. And here's Bo-Katan, which is appropriate because when we started season one and they wouldn't take off their helmets and things like that. Of course, a lot of people at that time were saying, but we've seen Mandalorians in the Clone Wars and Rebels all the time with their helmets off. So
Mm-hmm.
what's the deal with this? And so I feel like that was a good and appropriate explanation for um, why the Mandalorians we've seen so far uh, are so averse to taking their helmets off. Well, they're clinging to the ancient ways of Mandalore.
Was she mocking? Is the way part of that cult, religious cult, and she was kind of mocking him when she would say that?
I felt like the first time she said it, it definitely was sarcastic to him. And then the second time, I feel like maybe it was a little bit more genuine at the end of the episode.
Uh huh.
Um, I get the feeling that this is the way is probably like maybe a very traditional, old school, religious type phrase for the
Mm-hmm.
Mandalorians. And so a new wave or a new generation of Mandalorians, or I guess I would say mainstream modern Mandalorians like Bo Katan, it's kind of this maybe a cheesy or corny phrase that she's like, "Oh, okay. It's like, yeah, part of the culture, but we don't say that anymore
Yeah.
seriously."
Interesting. And just to finish with her, she um, has the dark saber, but then in an unshown part of the story of Mandalore, the Great Purge, where I believe the Empire takes over Mandalore, and then gets the dark saber. We haven't seen that yet. We've seen her take the rightful heir of at the throne with the dark saber in Rebels, and now we see her now without it. So I love the fact that they brought in a cartoon character, just like they did in episode 8 or 9, where they brought in a character from a book. They're bringing in all these ties, and this is exactly how Star Wars should be. This is how they should have done it in the sequel movies, taking all these characters. And, I feel like Rogue One did a better job than anything, taking these little minor characters and throwing them in, like with Saw Gerrera.
Yeah.
And I love that the Mandalorian is doing it, and can't wait to see what else they bring in. I mean, obviously, we now know Ahsoka Tano is going to be one of them. Um,
And I'm curious to see how this interaction he's had now with Bo Katan changes his trajectory of his kind of adherence to the Mandalorian creed. If he realizes, oh, the vast majority of Mandalorians don't follow the creed so strictly as I have and my upbringing has led me to do. Um, because for all intents and purposes, I mean, I think it's pretty clear. Bo-Katan is still her plan is still to rule Mandalore.
Yeah. She wants to get the dark saber and go back and take the throne back. Yep.
Yeah. Um,
Which honestly sounds like a really cool, upcoming part of the I hope part of the show to the retaking of Mandalore.
oh yeah, I can't wait for it in season 16 of The Mandalorian, The Siege of Mandalore.
Yeah, after how many side quests we go on here.
Yeah. So I think yeah, this first of all, again, um, I much to my dissatisfaction when I pulled up Disney Plus and loaded it up 35 minutes. I'm like, we're going in the wrong direction, John Favreau. All right. We need to be going back up. You could have easily added another 20 minutes to this episode and given us some flashback stuff with Bo Katan and losing the dark saber. You could have given us, you could have just gotten us to Corvus, the forest moon, Corvus, and just get us to that moon and then do a face reveal of Ahsoka real quick and then end the episode. Do some, you know what? Just let's make these episodes a little bit longer. Let's get some more events happening, sequence of events under our belt in these episodes. I'm not saying I didn't like it. It was a great episode, but it needs to be longer than 35 minutes.
Yeah, I agree. Speaking of Corvus, I did a little research. Corvus is not a planet that we've been to before, but Corvus is a name we've heard before. Do you remember, Sean, where we've heard the name Corvus?
I think it's the name of Iden Versio's ship
You
in
got it. Yeah.
Battlefront 2.
From Battlefront 2. The Corvus is the ship that held Inferno Squadron after the Battle of Endor. So I don't know. I don't know if that means anything, but we have seen the name before, but it is not a planet in the canon we currently have. It is a Imperial ship.
Well, Janina, who voices Iden Versio in Battlefront 2, tweeted out today that she was involved in this episode of The Mandalorian, but didn't want to
What?
spoil how she was involved. And I haven't followed back up to see, but apparently she was somehow involved on this episode. But I don't think it had anything to do with Iden, but I don't know. I'd have to follow back up on Twitter, but she tweeted that out today.
That's interesting.
Well, I
Huh.
will say about Ahsoka um, and Bo Katan revealing that she can lead Mando to a Jedi and go to this forest moon and ask for Ahsoka Tano and tell her that Bo Katan sent you. I immediately felt like, okay, next episode we're gonna go there and see Ahsoka. And yet, yeah, you know where I'm going with this. While I was watching, actually, a buddy of mine, I told him I'd give him a shout out here, so he's famous now on YouTube. Brian Frank, uh, he was saying that he thinks there's no way we see Ahsoka next
Yeah.
episode.
No,
But
I agree with
that
him.
is at least happening, in chapter 13, whatever. And I thought about it. And I was like, that's such a good take because why was I getting so ahead of myself thinking we're just gonna go from point A to point B because we never go from point A to point B on this show.
We're
There,
going back to Tatooine.
that's right. There will be
Another
probably
monster.
3 more episodes before we make it to Corvus and see Ahsoka. I'm sure with some sort of side quest or hijinks that ensue on Mando's path, but. Um, another part I liked about the episode, I did like that we saw some shiny stormtroopers instead of just the dusty ones on
Uh-huh.
uh,
Navarro.
Navarro. Yeah, and so I was like, oh, there's some good-looking stormtroopers here, and the Imperial officer when he took that like electric cyanide pill because had been
That was
captured. I was like, oh, okay, this is kind of some cool detail stuff I liked. But I have to say, what the heck was going on with that officer in the cargo hold that was like, close the doors, close the doors? Why is he freaking out right now? I mean, I understand that the Mandalorians are probably intimidating, and he's realizing his squad is getting gunned down, but he totally lost his cool, and that was a weird sequence. I'm like, is this supposed to be like comedic relief right here, or because this
I
guy's
didn't get that. I didn't get that either. And also, I was confused as to why there's no self destruct. I mean, isn't that a standard thing on all Imperial ships? But they're like, nope, I'll drive it down into the ocean.
and are I guess it's only the captains or commanding officers know of the protocol of the Long Live the Empire protocol where we're going to kamikaze this. Because why did he have to shoot the two pilots? Because I guess they weren't briefed on that protocol. So it's
I
like I don't trust that these guys are going to follow the protocol, which I guess is a fair assumption. A low level pilot like that maybe is going to say, I actually don't want to kamikaze this ship right now. I'm not going to commit suicide. So that was interesting that he had to shoot his two pilots before he could
okay,
take the
and
ship down.
and speaking of, they talked about hyperspace. The rules of hyperspace I do not understand because we see in Rogue One on Jeddah they can immediately go to hyperspace even within an atmosphere, even with a giant tidal wave of dirt and rocks, they can hyperspace. And Han Solo can jump out of hyperspace within an atmosphere on Starkiller Base in The Force Awakens. I don't understand hyperspace here. We
Well,
got to get out of the port before we can jump to light speed.
well, first of all, the Han's maneuver on Starkiller Base, my understanding is that was incredibly rare. That was not a thing that people did very often. But
What was it? What if he was off by just a millisecond?
but this goes back exactly to the conversations we've had how many times about the inconsistencies with hyperspace travel in Rogue One. Why didn't they just do that in The Last Jedi? Snoke could have just sent half the fleet a couple parsecs ahead and then come back and corner everyone. Why are we doing this slow speed chase through space in The Last Jedi? Doesn't make sense. But you know what? You got to let that kind of stuff go. But I did think
I
it
know.
was weird about it was like the rules of the port. So I guess if they're just trying to be law abiding
They're
citizens.
the Empire.
Yeah, but the empire is fractured at this point. I don't know. But the commanding officer that's like start to climb or ascend or whatever and the pilot's like, "What? We can't do that." And I thought to myself, "Well, what happens if they do? Is there some sort of like you said, they're the Empire. Is there a different police force from the New Republic there? Because I feel like the New Republic wouldn't just allow Imperials to be there.
No.
Well, oh, the Imperials are over there, but you know what? They're following the port protocol about not ascending, so
Too rapidly.
we're just gonna let them do their thing.
And honestly, what's the deal with ascending too rapidly? Why is that a problem?
I don't know. It reminded me of Rise of Skywalker on Exegol, where the fleet can't get out of the atmosphere without the beacons or whatever. Like, there's too much of this in Star Wars. This is the type of stuff that doesn't make sense. What else in this episode has happened that we haven't talked about?
Let's see. We have Ahsoka. We have Bo-Katan. We have, I mean, a fight sequence of the Imperials. I mean, that's really what the whole episode was.
Yeah, I feel like the action was good. I liked it. I liked the Mandalorians working together. I appreciated that. Now this is the second time in 3 episodes that Mando has um, thought that he has found a Mandalorian that follows his creed, and then they take off their helmet and he's disturbed by that. But then he ends up working pretty well with those people. So anyway, I think I'll be excited for the journey to continue. Like I said, we're now 3 episodes into an 8 episode season. So next week is the halfway point, and I think what we got in season 1 is gonna be what we get here in season 2.
Let's do a fun little predictor. Are we getting to Corvus at least?
By you mean
By
next?
the end of episode 4, will we have arrived or seen Corvus? off in the distance?
I think yes,
Okay, I don't think so. I think we're going some other place.
but where? Where would he go?
I think we've got. I think the ship is too broken to get him there. He's going to
Yeah,
have to make a stop somewhere.
that's a good point. Um, that's a good point. I could see that happening, that he has to stop somewhere for repairs. Maybe
And
he goes back to
where do ships stop when they're broken down? Where do they stop, Sean?
Just
Tatooine.
I
They
was gonna
stop
say
on Tatooine.
oh, I thought you were gonna say Navarro. Maybe he goes back to Navarro and he doesn't have any. He gave the Mon Calamari dude 1,000 credits, and the guy didn't even fix the ship hardly. And I'll say at the beginning of the episode too, though, it was hilarious when he was trying to land it and then he fell into the water. I was like, oh my gosh, what just happened?
I know. I was like, is that the end of the Razor Crest?
Like, are they gonna drown in there? Like how? But yeah, he threw out a lot of money this
Yeah.
episode. All his Mon Calamari credits, that he got in season one, the credits for the ship. I'm like, how much more money does this dude have?
That's a good point. That's right. That was the credits that what's his name gave him, right?
Yeah, Grief Karga gave him in the first episode of the whole series. He got those. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe he's broke and
Yeah.
he's like, I need to go back to Navarro because
And pick up another bounty and go get a bounty so he can get money to fix his ship.
yes. And I will say what's something interesting about that when we were watching, Corey said to me, do you think that the Razor Crest is out of every ship in the entire Star Wars universe, the ship that like is broken and needs repairs the most? Like it's the ship that
More than the
constantly.
Millennium Falcon.
Yeah, the Falcon does. I mean, the original trilogy was, it seemed like anytime they needed it to do anything in that ship, it wasn't working how they needed it to. But not at the level of the hull integrity has been
That's true.
compromised and we have to just ride along here sublight speed in the cockpit.
That's a good point.
And then the Mon Calamari who fixes it uses like rope and netting for things inside, and there are sea creatures now living inside the cockpit that almost attack Baby Yoda, but then he ends up eating it.
When
This
are we going
actually
to see Baby Yoda do some force powers again?
That's when that thing was descending, I was like, this is a perfect time for Baby Yoda to kill this thing with his force power. And this is a good segue to probably the last big topic that I have from this episode is I am ready for Baby Yoda to actually become a character in this show
Oh yeah.
because there is almost no character development for the child. He doesn't do anything. He makes
He he looks at the eggs. And then he
he
gets eaten by monsters.
he was petting the tadpole.
Uh huh.
Like, was that supposed to signify that he like appreciates life now and he has changed his ways and he isn't good?
Is that not character development enough for you, Sean?
I know. Listen, it's uh, dare I say less character development than your rating for character development in Star Wars Episode Two: Attack of the Clones.
Yeah. Well, that was. I don't like sand.
Uh, so I, yeah, I just am ready for the child to do something interesting again.
Yeah.
He had good moments in the first season, um, but we're 3 episodes into this season two, and I'm feeling like the child needs an arc. He needs a character arc where he not necessarily physically, but he needs to grow. He needs to make a decision. He needs to show us his force power, do something interesting other than just being an object acted upon in this show.
That's a good point. I like it. Well, until next week, Sean. Are we recording next week?
Well, next week we might be delayed a day because I will not be. I will not have computer access on Friday, but I will on Saturday.
Okay, cool.
So our episode will probably be delayed by one day next week. And let me just last thing say that even though was seemingly critical of this episode, I did actually think it was a really good episode. I enjoyed it. I was into it the whole time. Uh, Definitely better than last week, but I want it to be a little longer, and I'm ready for the child to show me something.
I actually have a point about that long episode, the very first one. The rumors I heard was it was originally going to be put out in theaters. Have I talked to you about this?
Uh-uh.
So when the UK got Disney Plus last year, or I guess this year, and they premiered episode 1, they premiered episode 1 also in theaters. People could go in the UK to the theaters to watch episode 1 where he meets the child. Rumor is that was also intended for season 2 of episode 1 of this season, also in the United States, because several scenes, well, the scene where they fight the crate dragon, if you notice, it goes to an IMAX format during that whole scene, and people are speculating that that was intended to be shown in theaters, and that will give credence to the longer runtime that we haven't seen since that first episode.
Very interesting.
Not that it was only in theaters, but a joint kind of like dual release of like you can go see it in the theater, which honestly that would have been kind of cool to do, or you could watch it at home.
Yeah, well, I mean, not to talk too long about the length of the episodes, but just because conventional television shows, almost every show that I know of, each episode is around the same length. I mean, it's like, oh, this show has 23-minute episodes. This show has 44-minute episodes, whatever it is when you stream a show. The fact that through season 1 and now season 2 of Mandalorian, it's just random. It's all over the place on how long these episodes are. It makes me think to myself, are they planning it this way? Or is this like Bryce Dallas Howard had 50 minutes worth of footage that she thought needed to be in there, and Jon Favreau was like, "Oh, we need to cut some of this," and every week is just a weird, this isn't working. We're only going to do 35 minutes this week, but this week, oh, this is some good stuff. Let's do 48 minutes this week. Like what? Like we need a plan here, people. What is the identity of this show? The pacing of this show needs to be consistent here.
Hour-long episodes. That's what we need.
That's what I want.
And more crate dragons.
Yep, we need space whales. We need Ezra Bridger coming back. We need Ahsoka.
Have you finished Rebels yet?
Yeah, I did a long time ago. I already told you that.
Okay.
Yes, I did. But I haven't watched a single episode of Resistance, which is that sequel trilogy cartoon.
Bro, I haven't watched it either. Are we going to do a reaction video to the new holiday special coming out?
You definitely should.
Yes, I agree. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for watching this. This was a little bit more rambly than I think we've done in the past, but you know what? Sometimes you just need a good Star Wars ramble. So let us know in the comments below what you think about this week's episode, Chapter 11, The Heiress. Do you think that we'll make it to Corvus next week and that we will see Ahsoka next week? What episode do you think we will actually see Ahsoka for the first time?
And what about Boba Fett?
Yeah. And are we going to go back to Tatooine at all this season? Lots of questions. I want to hear what you think in the comments below. Please like the video if you had a good time. Helps us out knowing that this is the type of content you want to see. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't so you can get the notifications. We're 3 weeks in a row now, the best we've ever done at being consistent with this channel of trying to give regularly scheduled content.
That's right.
But that's going to be it for us this week. We have spoken.
This is the way.
And we will see you next time on Dads of Dagobah.
See ya.
Bye.